New evidence regarding the Sony cyber attacks have led the U.S. to more than they bargained for. Computer analysts have determined a link between North Korea and the Sony hack. South Korean government officials have led the U.S. to think that the Sony hacks are part of the North Korean hacking group Bureau 121. The same group is blamed for previous attacks on South Korean banks. This all comes after Sony Motion Pictures pulled the release of the movie The Interview. The movie revolves around the plot to kill North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. North Korea denies any involvement in the hacking of Sony. A new challenge arises as the U.S. is beginning to restore diplomatic ties with Cuba. Previous economic sanctions has cost over $117 billion in trade and extra cost, according to Cuba. Now, as sanctions are slowly lifted, the Cuban government will have a greater responsibility to their people. No longer will Cuba be able to fully blame the U.S. for economic struggles so readily. Human rights improvements must also be maintained in Cuba as part of President Obama's agreement. Critics of the reconciliation are upset with Obama's overly generous talks with Cuba due to Cuba's poor history of human rights violations. Pakistan is striking back against the Taliban this week after nearly 150 people died in a school massacre led by the militant group. The Pakistani military claims they ambushed a group moving toward the Afghan border, killing 32 alleged militants. In the southwestern province of Pakistan, 8 militants were also killed during a Pakistan attack, including a Taliban leader. Due to the Pakistani military offensive against the Taliban, tens of thousands of people have been displaced. Victory in northern Iraq this week for Kurdish fighters taking on ISIS militants. Thousands of people have been trapped in the area of Mount Sinjar, which has been held by ISIS since August. Kurdish forces say they have finally broken that siege, freeing those people looking to escape. The overthrow of Mount Sinjar was one of the original factors leading the U.S. to begin airstrikes against ISIS. According to Kurdish officials, this is considered one of their biggest accomplishments yet. A big order for France to supply military equipment to Lebanon has some questioning a hidden agenda. A $3 billion agreement is bringing military equipment from France into the city of Beirut, all being paid for by Saudi Arabia. This deal will help bring much-needed weaponry into Lebanon to help fight the Islamic State. According to French magazine La Tribune, Saudi Arabia sped up arms deals with Lebanon after Iran announced it would help provide Lebanon with military equipment. Saudi Arabia is ruled by a Sunni regime, an adversary of the Shia Iran. Beirut has been thrown into the fight against the Islamic State as the militant group pushes across Syria and Iraq. In the most recent months, Lebanon has faced deadly terror attacks at the hands of ISIS. Successful airstrikes in Iraq killed 3 high-level ISIS leaders. The Pentagon has confirmed that since November, multiple high-level ISIS leaders have been killed. Although the deaths have been suspected, no official confirmation was released until this week. They believe the loss of these leaders will degrade the Islamic State's ability to command and control operations. Earlier this week, President Obama ordered another 1,300 troops to Iraq. Once deployed, the U.S. will have over 3,000 troops on the ground. Chinese President Xi Jinping's crackdown on government corruption is turning heads this week after a billionaire property tycoon is sent to prison. Chinese businessman Thomas Kwok was found guilty this week after being convicted of conspiracy to commit misconduct. Decades of bribery with Chinese government official Raphael Hui led to Kwok's arrest. Hui is facing charges for receiving over $4.3 million worth of monetary and housing benefits in return for government decisions. 3 other government officials will also be tried next week in relation to the scandal. Some of the most celebrated buildings in Hong Kong are attributed to the Kwok brothers. Plagued by outrage and controversy, FIFA is planning a 2-day meeting to decide on the publication of the Garcia report. This string of documents may unleash some very scandalous information about the 2018 and 2022 World Cup. FIFA has been placed under the microscope by soccer fans, politicians, and celebrities alike due to the allegations of corruption in the World Cup bidding process. UEFA President Michael Platini is accused of placing a bid for Russia to hold the World Cup in return for a Picasso painting. Other claims involve Russian President Vladimir Putin, accusing him of gaining covert support from FIFA President Sepp Blatter in order to gain his World Cup bid. FIFA made almost $2 billion last year from the World Cup, a large sum for a not-for-profit organization.